From the shade of the branches, it watches you, masked with the terrain, nearly invisible. You can't outrun it, outsmart it, or even fight it. All you can do is hope that luck is on your side. But luck is a fragile thing. Today we're spending 100 days living the life of the fastest theropod dinosaur to ever live, the Carnotaurus. But believe it or not, we weren't always this big. And so to tell you this story, it's time to take you back to where it all began on day 1. Our journey begins as a defenseless hatchling in a world fraught with danger. Somehow we'll have to reach adulthood and survive in an unforgiving world filled with danger and impossible challenges. As I hatched, let me introduce you to my brother, my one companion who would be key to my chances of survival in these lands. This is Mother, and together we set out on our mission to take over these hostile lands and one day claim the Grand Plains as our very own territory. Out there, our abilities would matter. The wide open landscape would let us use our speed and stamina to exhaust and bring down even the largest of predators that ever called this place home. So logically, as tiny hatchlings, we decided to enter the plains. Small, weak and vulnerable to almost everything that moved, we just wanted to see what it would truly take to rule these lands. As we crossed the border of the Grand Plains, I unlocked a new growth stage. In my brief journey to the plains, I had already matured a lot, and I was now a juvenile. This meant new abilities, and I wasted no time. I slipped into a nearby bush and unlocked Duke, an ability that lets me turn sharply in place. I knew this would be crucial later on, especially when facing larger predators. When I stepped back out, my little brother was already busy securing some breakfast. We shared our first meal together, and for a moment everything felt perfect. But it was only a matter of time before reality would catch up with us. As the rain faded, I climbed onto a nearby rock. We were officially there, the Grand Plains. Almost immediately we witnessed a fight to the death between 4 enormous carnivores. That alone should tell you how dangerous this place really is. The giants clashed around Mercy, trading brutal hits until one finally collapsed. That body would keep the survivors fed for a long time. Watching it, Mug and I realised something uncomfortable though. This challenge would not be easy. But not to be put off, it was time for us to get to work. I made my way down the hill and headed towards the river. Despite all the dangers of the plains, my first encounter there was surprisingly peaceful, as I passed what looked like a giant duck before it hit me. My brother was gone. I searched everywhere, but it was useless. I had lost the only friendly face that I'd ever known, and my worst fear had become true, with suddenly everything feeling upside down. I wandered deeper into the forest, calling for my brother and looking everywhere, so focused on searching that I didn't realise that I was being hunted. When I finally spotted my pursuer, it was already too late. The lack of awareness had put me in a life-threatening situation. This was Thorn, a juvenile Acrocanthosaurus just weeks away from the top of the food chain. This same predator likely hunted my brother, and now he was after me. I zigzagged between the trees trying to outmaneuver him, but Thorn was not letting this meal escape. Every time I looked back, he was still there. Suddenly, a crazy idea flashed through my mind. Without thinking, I used Duke, snapped around a tree, and bit straight into his leg before running again. I didn't know why I did it, but it worked. We burst onto the shoreline, and suddenly, he was falling far behind. Today it appeared that Mother Nature was on my side. Thanks to my stamina and the risky move that I pulled, I had escaped the grasps of Thorn, but now I had another problem. I was thirsty. I knew the river was dangerous, a place claimed by unseen hunters that ruled the depths, but thirst left me no room for hesitation. I edged forward, every step measured, and lowered myself to the water. I drank quickly, fighting the urge not to flinch, as I could see shadows shifting beneath the ripples. A crocodile suddenly exploded out of the water, missing me by mere inches. This was Carlo, and this would be our second near-death moment of this journey, and definitely not the last. Remember Carlo, as we will be seeing more of him later on. Now day 10 and still alone, I found another drinking spot nearby with a shallow area protected by a small island. No crocodile could ambush me there. After nearly dying in back-to-back days, I wanted nothing more than to stay away from the danger. But quests don't complete themselves, and if I wanted to grow up into one of the most fearsome predators to roam these lands, they would be essential to complete. While collecting flowers and bringing them to a beehive, a massive Quetzalcoatlus flew overhead. I dove into the bushes, barely breathing. If it decided to strike, that would almost certainly be the end for me. These birds terrorise smaller dinosaurs, and I'd be nothing more than a snack for it. Luckily this time, it vanished into the fog. I finished my flower quest and quickly realised I was already halfway to the next growth stage. I was now a man on a mission, completing one quest after another, and before I knew it, the night had faded into day. As the sun rose, the plains truly came to life. Up until this point, this place already felt too dangerous for me, but this morning, even bigger predators arrived. I crossed paths with a Carnotaurus, fast and dangerous, but I kept my distance. Exploring further, I was a witness to a Quetzal clash with a Dimetrodon, and it showed me just how lethal this world really was. Certainly not a place designed for me to survive for too long. Soon enough, I had reached the sub-adult stage though. I lay down and unlocked my strongest ability yet, Charge. A powerful ram-like attack capable of massive damage if used correctly. I was lucky the passing Rex didn't notice me, and I rose to my feet and slipped quietly out of the bush. I spent the day questing and avoiding danger, and when night fell once more, I began to explore once again. Down by the river, strange sounds had caught my attention. Now nearly an adult, this fear slowly faded into curiosity, and I pushed closer than I'd ever pushed before. To my sheer disbelief, it was Carlo the crocodile, far from the safety of his water. I knew once that Carlo had got bigger, I wouldn't stand a chance against him, so I told myself that prevention was better than cure. This little pest would be my true test. I crept in behind him, and as he rushed back towards the river, I charged straight into him. He vanished beneath the surface, only to return moments later, this time with his mother at his side. Full of confidence, Carlo lunged forwards with his jaws wide open, leaving his mother behind. But he missed, and I punished his mistake. He fought back until his mother dragged him away to safety. I'll give Carlo some credit, as this little guy had some serious courage. I snapped at her tail as a warning, and as they disappeared beneath the surface, I took the moral victory. While I didn't get a kill this time, it was still my first real taste of victory, and it felt incredible. I didn't have time to celebrate, however, because on my tail was already another hunter, the Allosaurus. We hadn't faced any apex predators so far, and every time I had been hunted by one, I'd managed to outrun them. This, however, was my first real test, and I accepted it. Fueled by my confidence from my previous encounters, the fight began. I led the massive carnivore into an open space and started with a bait. This was successful. The Allosaurus snapped at empty air, and as he lunged at me, I bit his tail. We circled each other, trading blows, and even though I was smaller, I held my ground. But then I suffered a series of vicious bites, my adrenaline drained, and the panic began to set in. Through the plains and hills I ran, desperate to escape the Allosaurus. But just as I reached safety, I spotted another predator, another Carnotaurus. This was a problem. Another male could kill me with ease at this point, as I was already wounded. Little choice, I just hoped that he wasn't looking for a fight. Suddenly though, as I got closer, a glimmer of recognition began to hit me. The Carnotaur was Mug, my long-lost brother, who I had spent weeks searching for. In a world built on fear, our reunion felt almost impossible, but here we are together once more. The Allosaurus that had chased me would likely have finished the job if it wasn't for Mug, but now it was time for the Empire to strike back. We returned as a team circling the Allosaurus, and suddenly the advantage shifted in our favour. We attacked one by one, drawing its attention, charging and steadily wearing it down. As the beast locked onto one of us, the other struck at its tail, refusing to let go. With every bite, its strength waned, and as the sun rose on day 25, this Allosaurus finally fell, marking a major milestone in our story, our first apex predator victory. We didn't need a grand celebration, simply knowing that we had survived and were back reunited was enough for us. A steady supply of food was the only way to survive in this world, however, and we couldn't have hoped for a better start. A couple of days later, we had reached adulthood. No longer small and vulnerable to everything around us, we had now become serious hunters, beginning to carve out our own legacy. On our list were Thorn and Carlo, and for now our main goal was to deal with them before we would claim the crown of the King of the Plains. First though, we needed experience, and a lot of it. While healing from our injuries, we went for a drink. I tried to warn Mug about the dangers of drinking from this part of the river, but he didn't listen. He went straight to the same spot that I had drunk from when I was younger, and just like that, history repeated itself. A crocodile lunged to the surface, snapping at my brother's face. Luckily, it wasn't Carlo this time, just another random crocodile, but it was proof enough that this water here was as dangerous as the land, if not more. Mug learned his lesson that day, and from then on, he would happily follow me to my trusted drinking spot. The biggest shock came when we returned to the Allosaur's body. It was taken. and not just by anyone, but by Thorn. He hunted babies, terrorized weaker dinosaurs, and stole corpses from others, relying on his massive size to scare off previous owners. But this wasn't going to work on us. The fallen Allosaur had been our first major kill, and we couldn't let Thorn take it, and let's not forget, Thorn was already on our kill list. Fueled by confidence from our previous fight, we charged at him without hesitation, slamming with horns, biting, dodging, and tearing at his skin. Fighting in this tight spot wasn't ideal, so we tried to bait him into the open, and he fell right into our trap. From what we could tell, he wasn't the most skilled hunter around, and his habit of bullying the weak had finally caught up with him. The tables had turned, and Thorn was pierced again and again. But the fight was interrupted. In these lands, these were known as the Giga Twins. Two massive giants stepped into our arena simply because they could and blocked our attack on Thorn. This wasn't a fight that we could win, but our objective was still clear: finish Thorn no matter the cost. We danced around the plains, circling and searching for an opening. When I found it, I seized my chance. I used my charge ability and sprinted around the Gigas and caught up with Thorn, delivering the finishing blow. Thorn collapsed to the ground, and while the Gigas immediately claimed the body for themselves, it didn't matter to us. The mission was a success. Thorn was buried beneath the feet of those he had once hunted, and we could finally cross him off our list. What happened next, however, could have almost ended this story. One of the Giganotosaurs charged across the plains, and before I could even rise to my feet, it sank its teeth into me. I had to run for my life, and clearly the Gigas did not want us here. But even if we were weak now, we would return. Just like that, the Giga Twins earned their way onto our list, and this story wouldn't end until one of us fell. As night reclaimed the sky, luck finally turned in our favour. Deep in the plains, not far from where we had slain Thorn, we found a fresh dinosaur carcass. Weakened and low on health, this meal was a godsend. I sank my teeth into the hearty flesh, slowly regaining my strength. But it didn't take long before the carcass's owner returned, furiously chasing my brother among the trees. What this concavinator didn't realise though, was that he was facing not one, but two Carnotaurs. With the experience we had gained, the balance of the fight shifted instantly. The fight was short, with the smaller predator attempting to disappear into the bushes, but outnumbered and overwhelmed, he had no chance. And just like that, this night became his last as he fell to the ground. The next morning, on day 50, the world had one less predator to contend with, and if our plan worked, another would soon fall. As you may have guessed by now, the next target was Carlo, and we entered Crocodile territory for what we hoped would be one last time. The previous night, we weren't the only ones enjoying a fresh meal. Carlo had claimed his first solo kill, hunting down a baby Therizinosaurus, clamping it in its jaws and dragging it under the water. He remained on our list and had become one of the biggest threats that we faced. Win this fight and the water area would be ours, but of course in this river, nothing was ever that simple. Both Carlo and his mother accepted the challenge, and the fight began. Horns versus teeth, water versus land, who would come out on top? At first the battle went in our favour, dealing significant damage right from the start. Carlo moved inland, and charging each other, we exchanged blows. He had grown bigger now, and his bites could inflict some serious damage, but so could I. The question of land versus water though, would remain unanswered, as both crocodiles retreated beneath the river's surface, and there was nothing more that we could do about that. We spent a long time deliberating our next move, before finally accepting the reality. If any of the plains could not be ruled, it was the water. Though the crocodiles remained a threat, we decided to let them hold the rivers while we claimed the land. In doing so, we forged a strange kind of alliance, or at least a peace treaty. To seal it, we ventured inland, searching for something small to hunt and offer as a token of trust. By luck, something small happened to be wandering by. This small theropod made the fatal mistake of wandering straight into the most dangerous territory in the game, and we were ready to teach them a lesson. After a few bites, he realised that facing us was hopeless and began to run, unaware that he was heading straight into crocodile-infested river. Just before the crocs could reach him, he veered into the hills, trying to escape. But my brother cut him off from the right, and with nowhere left to run, the smaller dinosaur leapt off the cliff into the water without hesitation. I watched from above in disbelief, marvelling at how easily it had been done. Carlo wasted no time and soon caught the prey, holding it in place while his mother snapped it up with a precise spin, finishing the job. I think we can safely remove Carlo from the list after all, as he was just a baby trying to hunt, and he wasn't really that dangerous. In return, the crocodiles let us drink in peace, and we could only hope that this strange friendship would last a lifetime. However, just as one problem had been fixed, another one arose. This water was now dirty, and this was a serious issue. Even with VIP access granted by the crocodiles, if we couldn't drink, our only options were to wait there until the water cleared, or to find another source. But leaving the Grand Plains would mean vacating our territory, and so this was not an option. We headed to the edge of the territory, hoping to find an alternative, but all we found was a Tyrannotitan guarding a fresh kill. Considering how hungry we were, don't mind if I do. We enjoyed a few minutes of risky fun, stealing food from the giant and playing a very dangerous game. Once we were full, I carefully dropped the stolen chunk back. Luckily, when we returned to the river, desperate for a drink this time, the water had now cleared and was safe to drink from again. Later that day, I noticed something unusual. My skin was changing. I had become a pale white Carnotaurus, completely albinotic, without a single spark of colour. I accepted this new skin and proudly ran across the plains, showing off my striking new look. Mug wasn't far behind, and his skin had changed too, although not as dramatically. He had turned into a dark coloured Carnotaurus, looking menacing and almost invisible at night. With this colour combination, the two of us became impossible to forget for anyone who glanced our way. Speaking of being noticed, the first creature to glance our way was a shark, swimming through our drinking spot. Soon one became two, and before long there were 3 sharks, and perhaps the most absurd fight yet was about to unfold. Just take a look at this. Enemies like these were completely unfamiliar to us, so the first few minutes were spent sparring and gauging their strength. Our attention focused on a brown shark in particular. After delivering some good damage, we decided to move on to the next stage of our genius plan, to get the shark out of the water. In our version of reality, this made complete sense. After all, these weren't crocodiles, so without water, they would be harmless. Or so we thought. The execution went surprisingly smoothly, and with minimal damage we pushed the shark further inland. We thought the fight was almost over, and without much thought started biting it in every possible spot. But apparently, sharks in these lands didn't behave like real sharks. This one was far more dangerous on land than in the water, spinning in place and dealing damage in all directions. I managed some good hits, but its reach was just too great to finish it. Eventually, the land turret rejoined its friends, and we were back where we started. The fight had begun out of curiosity, and it ended in the very same way. I found myself seriously injured after charging into the land shark swarm. Lesson learned, sharks are just not worth it. As they swam off, I thought about Carlo and hoped he would survive. From that day on, life settled into a rhythm. Sunrise, sunset, recovering, and constant fighting. But these plains gradually calmed since our first day here. Without major competition, we enjoyed moments of relief. But on day 70, everything was about to change. There was one last big test waiting for us, the final challenge that had haunted us since day 1, to kill an apex predator. The Giga Twins, who we were so desperate for a rematch with, had left the plains almost immediately and were never to be seen again. But there was a much bigger fish waiting for us later that day. First, a lone Allosaurus migrated from the north and entered the plains. This was too big a threat for us simply to ignore, and if the goal was to conquer this territory, well, just watch what Mug did. Consider this a proper introduction to the fight, because Mug simply wouldn't give me the chance to introduce our opponent. He relies on the fact that you're all visual learners. This Allosaurus did try to flee, but I blocked its path. Its only option now was to try and take one of us down, but that was not going to happen. We were mostly well coordinated, and even in brief moments when our coordination faltered, it didn't change the outcome. We chased the Allosaurus for a while before Mug delivered the final blow. Our aggression had paid off, and we collapsed into the grass, enjoying yet another meal and healing our wounds. But the danger was no longer on land or in the water. It was now in the sky. I noticed birds gathering a bit too close for comfort, watching us from the trees with hunger in their eyes. Over the last few days, their numbers had grown, and they were slowly starting to become a major threat. In these lands, we called them the bullies, simply because they hunted baby dinosaurs and finished off the weak. After one of them laughed at me, I just couldn't take the disrespect. Knowing the risk, I climbed a hill and tried to knock one off, but it ended awkwardly. I fell and left with only a sliver of health, with my bones poking through my skin. The birds laughed at me in the background. So we decided to play their game. The next day, as the sun climbed through the sky, we set a trap. We carried chunks of meat from the dead Allosaurus to the cliffside, where they would be easily visible from above, and then we waited. The wind carried the smell across the plains, and I could feel something was in the air. To my surprise, it didn't take long for one of them to take the bait. The giant bird spotted the meat and swooped down to grab it, but just as it tried to fly away, my brother ran after it, biting its wings and forcing it to stay on the ground. The bird screamed and flapped, but it couldn't get free. One well-calculated charge from me finished our master plan. The bird fell, and in that moment, we regained our reputation as the leaders of the plains. With the birds gone, we could finally rest, at least, for a brief second, and it actually felt like we had the plains under our control. But later that day, thick fog rolled over the grass, and I saw shapes moving in the forest. Step by step, 2 Titans, the most dangerous land predators, walked out of the fog and into the open plains. The birds, the crocodiles, thorn, or the Giga Twins were all nothing compared to this. Our last challenge had arrived. They were bigger, stronger, and above all, there were 2 of them. 2 of the largest apex predators against 2 small, much weaker Carnotaurs, fueled by a dream to rule the plains and a hint of sheer madness. Every obstacle we had faced led us to this single, final moment, and there was no turning back now. The odds were stacked against us, and this fight was almost impossible to win, and that was exactly why we decided to fight it. They were meant to destroy us, and if we could somehow shift the outcome of the fight, we would claim the title of the rightful kings of the Grand Plains. So, the fight began. Mug and I, one final time, repeated what we had done countless times before: dodge, draw attention, bite, and run. But this time, it felt different. Something in the wind was slightly off, as if winter itself had arrived, and these titans brought it with them. The Titans were coordinated, covering each other, and leaving no opening for us to strike. It took a while before Mug found a gap, puncturing the defense and charging in at one point. While the Titans both focused on my brother, I seized my chance. Before they even realised I was already out of reach, and as they both lunged at the same time, they accidentally bit into each other, which must have hurt them. It was only the beginning, though, of a long, grueling dance that lay ahead. Even though the start had gone well, these Titans were still dictating the tempo, barely scratched, and every bit as deadly as ever. We chose the weaker, less experienced one as our primary target, and focused all our attention on him, and it seemed to be working. We circled, striking harder, taking bigger and bigger risks, fully aware that one mistake could mean the end. The targeted Titan was now drenched in blood, and for a brief moment, hope flickered. I glanced at Mug, a new spark of determination in my eyes, but what I witnessed next shattered my heart. He became trapped between the 2 colossal bodies of the Titans, unable to move, absorbing a barrage of punishing hits. By some miracle, he did manage to break free, but with blood covering every inch of him, it was uncertain whether he would ever fully recover from such a beating. Mug fled, leaving a crimson trail across the plains, and the fight abruptly shifted into a relentless chase. I tried to draw their attention, sinking a heavy bite into one of them, and when that failed, I charged. But he was ready, and before I could even turn, I took another punishing strike. But things were about to get a lot worse. Mug had sadly not made it. The damage he had taken was simply beyond healing, and he collapsed into the wet morning dirt, and the Titans claimed his body, taking a few chunks as they finished their dominance over him. This felt like the end of our journey. Alone, I wouldn't be able to close the distance on these monsters without being torn apart. I watched from a distance, powerless, feeling the same helplessness I had felt the day I hatched from my egg. This now was surely the end of my dream, or our dream. However, as the sun set for the last time on our challenge, I witnessed something that would change everything once again. Being the top predators, this duo was unmatched, but for a brief moment, they split. One Titan went for a drink, which proved to be a fatal decision. Crocodiles normally don't attack such massive predators, but Carlo was no ordinary crocodile. Watching from the water, he had already seen Mug fall, and with his mother by his side, the adult crocodile lunged in the river, snapping at the Titan's ankles. Carlo's immense strength, a force to be reckoned with, turned the fight into a true epic. He had an immense bite force, estimated to be one of the strongest in animal history, suitable for crushing large prey dinosaurs, and this encounter was more than balanced. The Titan, proud and stubborn, refused to flee, but soon its ankles were shattered, trapped, and unable to move. It was finished off by Carlo, who avenged Mug. This meal was sustained both Carlo and his mother for quite some time. Carlo had perhaps undergone the biggest character redemption arc in all of history, and he deserves some respect in the comments below. but Carlo's actions had now given me a sniff of an opportunity. In the bushes, I stalked the other Tyrannotitan. This matchup was still the toughest I'd face, but far more winnable than the previous encounter, as there was no longer two of them. As he returned to the plains the next morning, I was ready. This was my final quest, and I knew that Mug would want me to win no matter what. As I had promised, this story wouldn't end until one side fell, and I meant it. I charged forward, and without the giant noticing me, I delivered a brutal strike to his leg. The true final showdown had begun, and this time it would be different. Locked in, I moved with precision, changing angles, staying untouched, and consistently applying pressure to the king. Tail hits were manageable, but the tail took the least damage. I just had to avoid the body shots and devastating bites to the head. Soon, however, my health was already running low, and a change in strategy became necessary. I ran into the forest, thinking his massive body would struggle to navigate through the trees, but I was wrong. He had the advantage in these tight spaces, and even though I dodged a few head strikes, I still took severe damage. I needed better conditions, so I changed the fight location again. I knew one of us wouldn't be able to make it out alive, so I had to concentrate if I wanted to fulfill the purpose that I set at the beginning. However, there wasn't much space left to run, and without knowing it, I will soon trap myself on the top of the cliff. I hid among the trees, and as I moved, the Tyrannotitan passed. I bit him twice before being knocked back by its tail, and the chase continued. Now, at the edge of the cliff, with no room to manoeuvre and only a slim chance of survival, I took one last look at the lands where I had spent my life. The trees bent in the gentle wind, and the sun still shone, as it always had. The giant by now had caught up with me. Now desperate, I charged again, which was a reckless move, and he barely registered the strike as he climbed back up. This time, however, he was fully locked onto me, and there would be no escape. It was right about now that I could reveal the plan that I'd been crafting all along. Tyrannotitan was slower in running, slower in turning, and slower in every possible way. Keeping that in mind, just before the edge of the cliff, I spun around and in a heartbeat, perfectly executed a horn knockback attack. As he lunged for one final bite, he was sent tumbling off the cliff. Anger flashed in his eyes as he fell all the way down to where it had all began 100 days ago. Thank you all so much for watching the final Rampy video of 2025. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like so more people can watch it. I would be incredibly grateful for your support. Thank you all for all the support throughout the year. It's been an incredible year on YouTube, and I cannot wait for more in 2026. Be sure to check out some of my other videos, such as this one on screen now, as YouTube thinks that you will love it. Look after yourselves, have a great Christmas and New Year, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye for now.